trying to get in shape. That I'm a guy that gets lean easy. Like you've worked with me, like, you know, I don't need to do crazy jump through hoops or, you know, insanely, you know, hard things. I don't know what it was, but like, well, I do know what it was. It was I got too heavy and I ate crappy foods and ruined everything, you know?
Speaking to coaching athletes, you coach people, what do you think is the appropriate speed to lose weight? Because everyone wants to lose it faster than last time, but like what rate of fat loss do you promote with your clients? Like 1% a week, 2%, 1 pound? Like where is that kind of that good spot, that zone where people should be losing weight at?
Yeah, I mean, I like for bodybuilders, I try and keep it like, you know, obviously depends on your time limit. You know, like if there's a guy that's trying to make a classic weigh-in in 12 weeks, you know, and he's got to drop 30 pounds, okay, then there's going to be something that has to be done, obviously. You know, if you're trying to do it as optimally as possible, you know, I really don't try and have people lose more than 2 to 3 pounds a week ever, really, you know. I find, you know, and like we touched on earlier, you know, for optimizing everything else, right? You know, from keeping your strength as high as possible, you know, not having to push the food down too low so that your cravings and, you know, things like this are insane. You know, if you're pushed, you know, dropping down to 1,000 calorie deficit to get your weight down, doing 6 hours of cardio, you're going to be hungry as a motherfucker. I can tell you that. And your risk, you know, chances of binging or cheating on your diet are going to be a lot higher. So, you know, I like to keep it at a steady progression, say, yeah, like, you know, 5 to 8 pounds a month kind of thing. You know, and that really for 99% of people should be more than sufficient. You know, like even for me, we said, you know, say I can diet for a bodybuilding show for 12 weeks. I'm 30 pounds over stage condition, over stage weight, sorry. So, you know, if I lose 8 pounds a month over 3 months, that's 24 pounds. That basically brings even me, the biggest guy, into the zone that I should be. So if you're talking about a female, you know, or smaller bikini girl or something like that, you could even, you know, you should be closer to your competition weight percentage wise, like, you know, or sorry, number wise than that, percentage wise about the same. You know, so you could even bring those numbers down a little smaller, you know. So I think doing the amount that you can get a good consistent amount of weight loss without putting yourself in such a deficit that you're, you know, you can't maintain it or can't sustain it, as well as also keeping so that your performance, your training performance and daily, you know, just daily energy is still good, right?
So it definitely sounds like slower is better, 5 to 8 pounds a month. And for the most part, do people that hire you, do you find that if you had a wish, would you wish they hired you with less body fat, or are they typically right where they should be in the off season?
Oh no, generally people are way too fat. So I wish everyone came to me leaner, you know? You know, I would rather get a client that was on the leaner side and I had the opportunity to put a little body fat on him than the first, you know, while before we can even get into a growing phase or a dieting phase, we're trying to take off 30 pounds of excess body fat. You know, obviously it depends. This is me talking about competitive clients. I don't really work with lifestyle clients, you know, but if you're talking about a lifestyle person, I mean, it really depends, you know, what your end goal is. But for a competitive client, I would always rather have someone a little on the leaner side. It gives you a little more, you know, room to go places, in my opinion. But I think as a whole, especially with young male bodybuilders, and I find it honestly with a lot of females that are doing, you know, bigger physique, stuff like this, they all get way too fat in the off season, you know? I think a lot of it nowadays is, I think for men, it mostly comes down to misinformation. And I think for girls, it's because a lot of times just of poor eating habits and they can't control themselves with a lot of things. So I think with men, they get in their head of, you know, I need to, like you said, the hard bulk and eat McDonald's every week and, you know, do these things because that's the only way to get big and strong. And I think for a lot of girls, they do crash diets all year round. And then the off season comes and they, you know, can't contain themselves. So they blow up 40 pounds over stage weight. So, you know, obviously neither is the great place to be, right?
Yeah, so it sounds like for the most part, people are overbulking, and the people that are dieting really hard can't stick to those diets, end up rebounding too hard in the off season. But as a percentage, what percentage of people do you think are keeping it together in the off season? They're doing exactly what they need to, versus what percent are overeating or overbulking or consuming too big of a calorie surplus?
I mean, the percentage is definitely vastly in favor of the people eating too much. You know, I mean, I would say, especially from competitors or even non-competitors. I mean, you know, people generally all eat way too much. You know, it really depends. I think in a lot of bodybuilders, it goes really hard one way or the other. You either get guys that are just, you know, lazy and undereat significantly. And they're doing way too much volume, way too much expenditure. They're training 7 days a week and eating no food. And then they're like, I can't grow. Or you're getting guys that are doing, like I said, the hard McDonald's bulk, and getting nowhere with it. And then they think they've grown a bunch and then they go to diet for a show and they're the exact same weight that they were the year before. Right. So, I think way too many people are getting way too heavy in the off season. And I think, like we said before, I think it's mostly because of poor dieting techniques that are leading them to then binge after the show. So, I think if more people came down at a steady rate, and kept themselves in a more, striking range for their contest weight, it would be a lot more easier for them to maintain all year round. Like myself, I mean, only getting 30 pounds over stage weight, which percentage wise isn't dramatic for a 300-pound guy. For me, it's very easy to, go up and down in that little bit. And I do it slowly and gradually. I don't need to push anything too crazy in my prep. I don't need to, try and gain 1,000 pounds in the off season to rebound from it. I mean, it's a very easy maintainable level, right?
It's great that you're saying this, and it's because I keep preaching about main gaining, and I have been criticized by so many people saying it's the wrong way, that no, you have to bulk up. And the majority of my videos are all about losing weight and how to be in a deficit and lose weight. And people are saying, well, why don't you make a bulking cookbook? And I'm like, because everyone's already bulking. People don't have a hard time eating food. They have a hard time sticking to a diet. So that's why my cookbook is all about eating low calorie dense foods. And for the most part, most people, they have no trouble eating enough, but they can't seem to diet. And so to hear you saying, the majority of people are too heavy, eating too much, it just kind of verifies that I'm actually preaching the information that I should be. And the one kind of population or group of people that aren't are the people that are striving to be the single digit body fat. They want to look like Gymshark models and so on. That's where I think there's a problem. And when I tell people to main gain, I'm not telling people to stay in contest shape. Like I would never tell you or Chris or anyone that they should look like they do on stage year round. That's just silly. You should be at a weight that's healthy for you.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. I mean, and from even from a top level bodybuilding perspective, how much better, and even from a longevity standpoint, when you're not going up and down like that, it's way, way healthier for one. And two, it's just way easier to maintain. I mean, like for me, to not have to push down so hard and to not have to, I'm not trying to force feed 1 million calories that are unnecessary in the off season, has made my bodybuilding career honestly a lot more successful, like I remember 2019, not against coach's advisement or anything. I, had one of those off seasons, the last off season I ever had where I was like, I'm just going to get huge. I'd stayed pretty lean every off season before that. I maybe had one where I got a little sloppy, but then this one year I'd competed like all year. I had kind of a not successful year. I didn't make it to the Olympia that year. This was in 2018 going into 2019. So to start the 2019 season. And it was trying to get in shape that I'm a guy that gets lean easy. Like you've worked with me, like, I don't need to do crazy jump through hoops or, insanely, hard things. I don't know what it was, but I do know what it was. It was, I got too heavy and I ate crappy foods and ruined everything, to get down for that show, it just seemed impossible, and it was just something I was just so unaccustomed to. And by the time I did get to stage, the look just wasn't the same. Like I did Toronto Pro that year. I came second to John De La Rosa. And from pushing down, placing aside, I could have been last. I mean, it's irrelevant. The look was just not the same. When I pushed down so hard, coming from a unhealthier, heavier position, the look of life and pop to my physique just wasn't there the same. Because obviously I was pushing down hard. So my training performance went. My legs were tired all the time from too much cardio, so I couldn't train them. So I lost a lot of volume in them. And I just looked tired. I looked tired. I looked flat. I was able to regain it a little bit going in later in the season, but it took, a while to get that look back after that because I'd pushed down so hard from being in such a heavy, shitty position. It just made, it so much harder from both ends, right?
Absolutely. I experienced the same thing back in my younger days. I'd compete as a lightweight, like 154. I said, I got to put some size on. Bulked up, got to 187, said, yes. I put on all this muscle, dieted down the next year, had the hardest diet ever done, compete at 154. Never even looked better. I was like, well, that was a waste. And it's as you said, you're doing extra cardio, your calorie deficit's deeper, so you don't have the energy and you can't train as hard. So that extra bulk that you do, it's going to come at the expense of having to cut extra hard in the aftermath.
Well, yeah, and then in the complete opposite this year, I stayed 7 to 8 pounds lighter than that year I got, 2 years ago, where I had way less muscle and I was heavier than I was this offseason. And then I ended up, in comparison, I think that Toronto Pro, I ended up being about 242 versus this year at Tampa Pro and Texas, I was like 260. So we're talking a difference of 20 pounds more muscle, but I was lighter in the offseason this year. So, I mean, obviously there's not a huge correlation between how heavy I get in the off season, how much muscle I have, and how heavy I'm getting on stage. So I think the proof is in the pudding there that putting on that excess body fat is not going to necessarily yield more muscle. I mean, not necessarily, it's definitely not going to, and I can prove that. I think there's obviously, like we've talked about, a level you need to get to optimize performance. And like you've said, you don't need to be lean. You don't need to be, shredded abs, like stage lean, contest lean. That's obviously not conducive at all. But getting, fat or getting to the point where you can't see your abs anymore, or anything like that, especially as someone, with a good amount of musculature, you should be able to see these things all year round. If you're more than that, you're doing more harm than just making your prep hard. I can tell you that.